And welcome to the Watchman. Folks, we are living in a dangerous but historical moment. Right now, you have a front seat to the complete unraveling of the Middle East as we know it. A terrorist army calling itself the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, better known as ISIS, is in the process of forming a caliphate over large portions of Iraq and Syria. Look at the areas highlighted here in red. A radical jihadist Islamic State is being established by brute force in the very heart of the Middle East. Make no mistake, Iraq and Syria have now ceased to be nation states. Those countries, as we know them, are gone. And it's a good bet that ISIS will look to eventually expand its caliphate into Jordan and Lebanon after it consolidates its gains in Iraq and Syria. In the meantime, Iran is Iran, closing on nuclear weapons and sponsoring its terror proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad as they wreak havoc across the region. Today, we're going to talk about all of that and much more with my guests, Middle East expert Tawfik Hamid, author of Inside Jihad, and CBN contributor Raymond Ibrahim, author of Crucified Again, Exposing Islam's New War on Christians. Gentlemen, welcome. Tawfik, great to have you back with me in D.C. Great to have Raymond out of Virginia Beach. And I want to start not by talking about ISIS, but analyzing the latest events out of really the most influential and populous Arab nation, Tawfik, Egypt. Now, you're intimately familiar. You're an Egyptian native. Raymond, your parents were Egyptian Coptic Christians. You're both intimately familiar with Egypt. What is the state of affairs right now? The Arab Spring in many ways began in Egypt. You could say it began in Tunisia, late 2010, but it really blew up, no pun intended, in Egypt in 2011. We've seen two major revolutions, Tawfik. General Sisi was just elected president. What is the state of affairs on the ground in Egypt right now? Any signs for hope?
There is hope, and I see hope in three things. First, the powers that are against radical Islam now are not only the government, but the people themselves. Plus, the attack on the ideology of the radicals is huge on the social media, Facebook, Twitters. So this is one element here. You don't see only the government trying or the military or intelligence in this war. No, you see the people themselves plus the social media exposure for the ideology. That is great step forward, I see it. The second is the current situation in Egypt financially is difficult, but there is a tendency from the international community, especially from the Arab world, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and other countries to support and help Egypt in this critical stage. The third is the Egyptians have faced similar problem in the 90s and they managed to deal with it. So if the international community just let the Egyptians do it in their own way to defeat radical Islam there and control it, and you see actually a decline in general in the rates of major explosions that happened after the removal of Morsi. There was some terrorist acts and there is a beginning of, so I see some elements of hope here. It's not just absolutely useless situation.
But the Muslim Brotherhood will not go quietly, which is kind of their MO. They're not going quietly.
Of course not. They will always cause a lot of trouble, and you still have all the possibilities on the table, depending on the decisions that will be taken.
Absolutely. And Raymond, you recently wrote a piece, which everyone can find at RaymondIbrahim.com, about how the Muslim Brotherhood, and Tawfik, you know very well about this, how the Muslim Brotherhood is using rape, sexual assaults to attack their enemies. We have a clip. It's graphic, folks. Just a warning, we have a short clip. We've edited it because it is graphic. A clip of the Muslim Brotherhood carrying out what can only be called a sexual assault in Egypt. Take a look. Brutal stuff. Now, Raymond, you wrote a piece about this, and again, we edited that, folks, because it is brutal, graphic footage of a sexual assault carried out by the Muslim Brotherhood. Raymond, tell us what's going on here, how the Brotherhood is using this as a weapon.
Sure, Eric. What's going on is basically among the Muslim Brotherhoods and the Islamists and some of the Salafis and so forth, they feel that since the post-Brotherhood revolution that saw the ousting of Morsi, that they want retaliation, and that we saw the retaliation, for example, against the Copts, where up to 80 churches were attacked and burned. But what we're seeing now is, it's like a bitter, sadistic sort of retaliation, where the logic is women, of course, you belong at home anyway. if you're a good Muslim, the nerve for you to not just be out, but you're celebrating the man who actually ousted the Islamist agenda, for example, and ousted the Brotherhood. So we're going to retaliate. And in their mind, of course, you have to understand they're not doing anything wrong. They have Islamic clerics who come up and actually blame the women, say it's your fault because why are you out in public? But even before that, there was a story where a Muslim Brotherhood member actually raped a 6-year-old boy, just because the boy was holding pictures of Sisi, of course, the arch enemy of the Brotherhood, and singing his praises, and he lured him into a shed and actually raped him, and he said, "I'll show you and your Sisi." So it's just a very kind of primitive, retaliatory type of process that's going on. And but the problem is it has traction, it gets legitimacy, again, from Islamic ideology, again, saying that, women, you need to follow men, and men should be Muslims, women out and about and, dressed in Western attire and praising, a guy who's seen as anti-Islamist, well, they're free game, obviously, and anyone else.
And this is really the true face of the Muslim Brotherhood, Raymond. And Tawfik, right. I saw you recently at an event here in Washington, D.C. Yeah. You pulled me aside and you told me about this sexual assault story.
Yeah.
And you said, Eric, you must do this story.
Yes.
So we have to do it. What are your thoughts after seeing the footage of the Muslim Brotherhood sexually assaulting innocent women in the streets of Egypt?
Yeah. I'll tell you, first of all, Eric, the Muslim Brotherhood have prepared people psychologically to accept the concept of sexual assaults. When they justified attacking women in Tahrir Square, the sexual harassment was existent. But when the Islamists came to power, I mean the Muslim Brotherhood, many of their leadership started to justify attacking women, and they criticized the victims of rape instead of supporting them. So this was the first step in the process. Then when you see this video, you can see one important thing. It happened at the same day or time of the President Al-Sisi, President Sisi's speech, which was a very historical speech that has wonderful meanings for the future, reformation of Islam, new understanding and peaceful understanding for the text. And it was really wonderful speech. They ruined the whole image by doing this catastrophe, by making a woman naked in the middle of Tahrir Square, and they distracted the whole public opinion and the world media toward this instead of Al-Sisi first presidential talk, which was very historical, meaningful, because this is the first defeat of an Islamic regime probably in the world. So they ruined the event, tried to ruin it. And the third point, which many people may ask, how could you predict that the Brotherhood were behind this attack? When you see the timing of it and the way it is done, it's a new way to get a woman completely naked and through the water, boiled water on her body. This is something new. When something new happened on this particular time and there is someone benefiting from it, and what make it really very clear is when you see the video camera. Have you noticed the video camera here is not head to head?
Right.
If something happened while I'm in a demonstration, I'm trying to take a photo, I can't get this position with such quality. And this explains to you why the first video that was released about the victim was from Rasd, which is news media for the Ikhwan or the Muslim Brotherhood. This was the first, this was the first video to be released by the Muslim Brotherhood. Is it just all coincidence to get such a quality? Some man from the Brotherhood in this spot in this particular time by chance? It's very hard to imagine anyone doing it but the Brotherhood orchestrating it.
And Raymond, you monitor the Arab media so closely. I want to ask you two things, really. You're of Coptic Christian descent, obviously. Tell me the situation on the ground for Copts in Egypt right now, number one. And number two, what's the reaction in the Arab media and among the people of Egypt to the Obama administration's continued support of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they continue to hassle President Sisi in many ways?
Well, to your first question about the Copts, you have to understand the Copts are in a very bad position. It's a sort of between a rock and a hard place, no matter who is in charge. Personally, I think Sisi is, of course, markedly better than the Muslim Brotherhood. Some people say he's pious, he has Islamist inclinations and so forth, which may be true, but still, on the whole, I think he has a much better approach to the Copts. Definitely the things that he said are much better. He meets with the Pope and things of this sort. They've promised to build the nearly 80 churches that the Brotherhood have destroyed. So far, one can say so good. On the other hand, you have to remember that the problem isn't really, it wasn't Morsi and it wasn't Sisi and it wasn't Mubarak. It's the Islamist indoctrination of the society of Egypt among the Muslim majority populace, which is such that it sees the Christians and non-Muslims in general or any minorities as inferior. And so if for example, as often happens in Egypt, another a flare-up occurs, Muslims accuse Coptic youth of going out with a Muslim girl, and then they go and burn a couple of churches. It's going to be very difficult for Sisi to come
Ray,
very strongly on the side of the
I
Copts.
hate to stop you there, Ray, but we got to take it to the break right now. Coming up is the caliphate, ready to return. Stick around.
Where are we?
I cannot lock in on our time or location.
Amazing. Which tribe is he from?
You want the savior of the world to be born in a stable?
History's in the making, mister. Do you want it or not?
Daniel, you have to listen to us.
And who might you be?
You're in great danger.
Master! Master! We are about to drown!
Why are you fearful?
I say to you, arise. I have been healed!
When you care, souls are set free. When you give, lives are made new. When you share, eternal life begins. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
ستعود إن شاء الله. ستعود الولايات المتحدة العربية على يد هذا الرجل ومن معه إن شاء الله. ستكون عاصمة الخلافة، ستكون عاصمة الولايات المتحدة العربية هي القدس إن شاء الله.
Now, that was a leading Muslim Brotherhood cleric speaking at a rally in Egypt just prior to Mohamed Morsi being elected in 2012. The Brotherhood's goal, like that of every jihadist group, is the return of the caliphate. Raymond, I want to go to you. For those who don't know, tell us what the caliphate is.
The caliphate is basically the Islamic government, the Islamic polity historically and doctrinally. After the Prophet Muhammad died in 632, and his followers, who became known as the caliphs or khalifa, which is basically the successors, they became basically, in Western parlance, the emperors. And their government grew out of Mecca, or their rule, let's put it, and it spread out through the Islamic conquest all across North Africa, Southwest Asia, and so forth. And then that became all the land that was ruled by Islam was the caliphate. Now, when you say ruled by Islam, it means ruled by Islamic Sharia law, which of course is what the caliph is responsible for enforcing, because in Islam, and specifically in the concept of the caliphate, there is no separation between politics and religion. It's all one and the same, which is of course Sharia. So when you think of caliphate, you must think of Sharia. And the ultimate actual existence of the caliphate is to expand. Historically, it always expanded. It expanded from Mecca, and then Medina became part of it. Then it expanded into Egypt and into Libya, all the way until into Spain, Far East into India, and so forth. And so its ultimate purpose was conquest and bringing lands under its authority and then subjugating it in the context of enforcing Sharia law. In fact, among the Ottomans, who were the greatest jihadists, really, of the Islamic State from a historical point of view, the Sultan, or the Caliph, depending on how you want to call him, was actually exonerated from all of his Islamic duties, including prayer and fasting and so forth, simply so he can always be on the battlefield expanding the caliphate in the Islamic Empire. And so when you hear all these different groups, and it's important to remember that whether you're a moderate or a radical Islamist, if you're an Islamist, you are fundamentally radical simply because you want the return of a caliphate. And the return of a caliphate and everything it implies is fundamentally radical and hostile to everything non-Islamic.
Tawfik, what does the rise of ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria right now, they're forming, it seems, a mini caliphate. What does that mean for the Middle East?
Simply means another Taliban in the middle of the Middle East, threatening a terrorist training camp at a very big level, threatening the security of neighbor countries from all directions, from Israel to Saudi Arabia. And not only that, some of them can try to reach Sinai to attack the Suez Canal. So we can have major spillover effect here. In addition, the Shia will try also to resist them. So you will see a Shia part in Iraq supported by Iran, which will likely attract or might attract the Shia in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia to join them to make a big Shia state. And in this case, the oil sources in Saudi Arabia could be affected at the end. So you are dealing with a situation that can be very explosive and can affect the future of the world and its economy and security.
Yeah, and we have obviously Jordan, we have Lebanon, we have Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
this thing could spiral
everywhere around. So you can, and also we have to learn here, Eric, from our mistake before when we supported, remember the Taliban or Al-Qaeda one day against the Russians, and at the end they turned against us.
Yeah. Well, Tawfik, much more coming up about the Shia jihadists after the break. We're going to discuss what does Iran want. We're going to discuss that and how we can win this thing. What can we do? We have some answers after the break. Don't move.
What is wrong with you?
I hate you. Easier than this. You just don't know what to do.
Being a foster or adoptive parent can be very difficult. I know. I've been there. That's why Orphans Promise developed Adoption and Foster RX, solutions for wounded families. In this DVD series, parenting experts take on the tough issues and offer proven strategies. Don't miss this vital information. Call now, because there is hope for wounded families.
Insight into today's events, news you don't get anywhere else, and inspiring stories of hope. Now you can share them with your friends. Go to cbn.com to I Saw It on the 700 Club for a fast, easy way to share your favorite videos.
I really wanted to help women, and I knew going back to school would be the best way to just even achieve those goals. Regent University just offered me the opportunity to be able to go to school online to get a degree in a secular discipline of psychology with a Christian basis and be able to take care of my daughter.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Eddie, check out this news story from the 700 Club. It's a perspective you just don't see anywhere else.
Go to cbn.com to I Saw It on the 700 Club for a fast, easy way to see and share your favorite videos.
And welcome back. I want to get into some possible solutions with Raymond and Tawfik, a strategy to defeat the Islamists who are clearly on the march right now. But first, we have Sunni and Shia, as we were saying before the break, killing each other across the Middle East, and the rise of ISIS has made it that much worse. And of course, Iran is the Shia powerhouse. I want to get both of your thoughts on this. Raymond first, you're a student of Islamic history, as is Tawfik. Is this as bad as you've seen it between Sunni and Shia?
Well, it's very bad, but of course it has precedence throughout history between Shias and Sunnis. You see this sort of thing all the time, and it's when it comes to these sorts of groups, it's basically, you know, who's the immediate enemy, and then as they continue fighting each other, you find it gets smaller and smaller. And in fact, based on a saying attributed to the Islamic prophet Muhammad, it basically says something like there are 70 Islamic groups, and only one of them is really Islamic. Which means, you know, and this goes to the idea of why they're constantly warring, because each one claims they have the truth. The others are heretics and infidels and so forth, Shia Sunnis, and you even see it among Sunnis themselves and even Shias themselves. So, but of course, always the greatest enemy is the infidel, and in this context, it would be in the region Israel, of course, the West in general. But when you see all of these numbers or these groups kind of being sidelined for whatever reason, and now you have the Sunnis and the Shias or any other subgroups together, then they go to war. So that's usually the modus operandi among these groups.
Yeah, it seems that Sunni and Shia jihadists can put their differences aside when it comes to killing Americans or Israelis, unfortunately. Tawfik, you've done a lot of work on trying to form a more moderate form of Islam over the years. Tell us more about what you're doing to try. Obviously, jihadists are on the ascent right now, but there's a lot of good things going on the ground in the Middle East too that we might not hear as much about. Tell us about that.
I'm actually trying to work at the cause of the problem, not just the problem itself, to treat the cause of the disease rather than the symptoms. Terrorism is the symptoms, but the ideology is the cause of the disease. I'm starting like hopefully a center to counter radicalism at the mental level in what I call the brain stand, that focus on ideology, psychology, behavioral modification, just working at the mental level. This is number one. Number two, I have already experimented some things. I created a modern interpretation for the Quran, around 650 pages. Then I created a Facebook out of it with hundreds of examples to reinterpret the text in a relatively peaceful way to avoid such hatred and violence and barbarism. And surprisingly, in 1 year time, I got more than now 2 million likes or followers on it, which still tells you there is a momentum and hope for some change. Had I done this before, like 10 years ago, I wouldn't have got 50 people. Now I got 2 million people following it. So you have on one hand the terrorism exacerbated, which is expected from the radicals. And at the same time, there is a trend within the Muslim societies, or within some of them at least, to move away from the radicals. And this is the momentum that I believe we should use to defeat radicalism at the end.
Right. Raymond, we have about a minute left. Tawfik is obviously trying to, I guess you would say, a reformation in many ways. You wrote an article recently. You're not as optimistic about an Islamic reformation or the possibility. Tell us what you think.
Well, I basically think a lot of people are putting a lot of hope that just as Christianity reformed, and they use it in a very simplistic sense, the Christian Reformation, so Islam can reform. But from my point of view, Islam and what we're seeing right now, this is the Islamic Reformation. Our confusion is the word reform. Reform means to improve something, to change it into something better. In Christianity, basically the Protestants said we reject tradition from the church and we want the literal words of the Bible, and that was it. What you're seeing now is the same exact thing. Just like with Christianity, we are living in an age where Muslims are much more literate than before. Qurans are actually being distributed in the millions. But this wasn't the case before in the medieval era. And so you have Muslims who are becoming very acquainted with the actual teachings of Islam, including also the Hadith. And so really what I'm seeing is what we call radical Islam or Islamism or Salafism, or even if you want to go way back to Wahhabism, it is a reformation of Islam. In fact, that's what Wahhab, the man who began this Wahhabi movement, or so-called, all he wanted to do was reform Islam by going straight to the
Raymond,
text.
we got to leave it right
when you
there.
come to the text, that's where you see the difference.
Yes, we got to leave it right there. We're final thoughts after the break with Raymond and Tawfik. Stick around. What to watch in the Middle East. Don't move.
Hi, I'm Terry Musin. I'd like to tell you about Orphan's Promise. Orphan's Promise helps children who've had tragic beginnings in life.
My father died, my mother started drinking, and gave me away to the orphanage.
We were homeless, and she made me beg for food.
We don't know where our sister is. I'm looking for her now.
We want to return to be with our mother, but she doesn't want us.
In many countries, children are turned out of orphanages when they turn 16. They lose the only security they've ever known. Many will become easy prey for prostitution rings and criminal gangs. Together, you and I can break this cycle for these kids. For just $20 a month, you'll provide computer training, life skills, and people that care, preparing them for a future of hope. Show them God's love. Call the number on your screen right now and say you'll help.
He healed the sick, walked on water, and rebuked the storm. Jesus performed miracles that changed the world, and he shared the secret to that power with you and me.
Gordon Robertson, in his latest DVD, Our Father, Keys to the Lord's Prayer, takes you on a journey from King David's palace to the Sea of Galilee, revealing the mystery and the meaning of the greatest prayer of all time. You'll discover a deeper relationship with God, what it means to overcome evil, how to pray in the power of the kingdom, and the life-changing purpose God has for you. As a special bonus, you'll see a tour of some of Israel's most important sites and learn the amazing discoveries that are being uncovered today.
Learn how to pray the way Jesus prayed and release the power of God's kingdom in your life.
Get Our Father, Keys to the Lord's Prayer, available now.
They're the original Islamic terrorist group. They spawned Al-Qaeda and Hamas. They're America's next great enemy, and they're in your backyard. If you want to understand the war on terror, you must first understand the Muslim Brotherhood. Pick up my new book, The Brotherhood, America's Next Great Enemy. Available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold from coast to coast. We only have about a minute or so left. I want to get your thoughts real quick on what to watch for in the Middle East as we move forward. It's been a chaotic year. Any hope, any optimism for 2014 as we move along here?
Look, in Egypt, there is some hope for optimism, as I mentioned to you, with the leadership of President al-Sisi and people turning against radical Islam. That's good. But in general, the future will be determined with the decisions that will be taken. Are we going just to treat the symptoms of the disease and focus on it? And it failed. We have in Afghanistan, it was not enough. In Iraq, you have seen the results. So we, I mean here in America, spend $5 trillion and we have not really achieved real stability in these places. So I think it will all depend if the next stage, the governments will be able to attack the cause of the problem and work hard. You need to use effective psychological warfare operations and financially also crack down on the financial support for terrorists.
Tawfik, Hamid, thank you. Raymond, Ibrahim, thank you. Check out their work online. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.